Hey everyone, thank you for watching this pitch video. This is for the UNL School of Computing presentation grader. And so for those of you that might not know me, my name is Robert Dyer. I'm a professor in the School of Computing. I'm going to be the lead sponsor on this particular project. There probably will be one more sponsor. That would be Professor Anuradha Reddy. She is just joining the School of Computing this semester, so she's not physically here yet, but she will most likely be participating in this project as well. Um, Before I get into what the project is, I kind of want to go into the background and explain why are we looking at doing this. So in a lot of courses, there are presentations, and as faculty, we have to grade those presentations. And live grading student presentations is actually a really hard task. One of the biggest problems here is that there's substantial amounts of multitasking that goes on while you're trying to grade these things. So as they're going and presenting, you're often analyzing the slide content to see, is it, a good fit for the course? Are they covering the right things? Is it at the correct level for whatever their intended audience is? You're looking at, for me specifically, like the visual design of the slides or the visual design of the images and trying to analyze how well they did in terms of visual design and visual communication. You're listening to the speakers themselves, trying to listen to things like their tone, the volume, the tempo, how they're actually talking. You're watching for gestures. You're watching for movement of the presenters. If there's multiple presenters on a team, for example, how they move around, how they block, things like that. You're watching and tracking how time is being used, who spoke on each slide, how did they speak, how did they hand off to each other, how did they handle the Q&A session at the end, things like that. And then oftentimes you're also doing something that's really unrelated to the grading at all, which is just presenting the presenters with like reminders of how much time is left. But you have to remember to do all of this while you're doing these other things. So this gets really problematic, and it gets very difficult to grade presentations and to have enough notes to be able to grade them well. And so what happens is this friction in the grading process really honestly winds up leading to much slower grading overall. And I think for the students, the worst part here is that they generally get, in my opinion, worse feedback. They don't get good feedback because we're not able to spot and track all of the things that really we would like to comment on. And so what I'd like to do is kind of go over, first, what is it we actually do as a professor? And obviously every professor is going to have a different kind of way of doing this, but how have we been doing it in my courses? Well, typically what I'll do is I'll have some sort of template. And so I'll go and create a template for each team or each person that's presenting. And I try to think through what are all the things that I need to track. So I have things in there for starting time, ending time. If there's a demo that has to be in the presentation, I'll track the demo. And then I've got a bunch of kind of common things that I'm looking for. So for example, in demos, students oftentimes will have like a dark theme or a light theme. And so I want to track and comment on their use of light theme versus dark themes and things like that, or the font size. So we have a lot of common things. And so I can go and kind of template that out. And so as they're presenting, I just go and for some of these, I'll just delete the lines, right? So I'll delete the dark theme line because they had a good light theme or something like that. And there's just a bunch of things that we look out for. And then I just make additional notes wherever it makes sense, right? So if I see something weird with the format of the slides and it doesn't fit in my template, then I'll just type up some notes there. But as I'm doing this, essentially, I'm not really watching the presentation, right? And so the more time I have to look down at my template and type things up, the less I'm really able to pay attention to them while they're presenting. And so I'm likely to miss a lot of things. And then what we do is we take, all of these notes, all of the feedback that we've collected, there may be more than one instructor, so there might be 2 or 3 of us, taking notes, but we take all that feedback. We take the rubric for the presentation, and so here's an example rubric for one of my courses, and we try to fit it in there. And so based on the feedback we've got or the notes we have, we say, okay, it looks like they have a B level release content. So for that rubric item, we would give them the score of a B, and then we try to provide written feedback. So we have to take all the notes and everything and write it up into actual feedback. And this is actually really time consuming as well. So trying to figure out, what feedback is important, which ones can we kind of skip over. Maybe they made a lot of mistakes, so we just want to focus on a couple of the most important mistakes, things like that. and then we have to type it all up. And so you have to do this again for every student or every team, and it takes a lot of time. But this is essentially how we grade a presentation. So what I'd like to do is kind of go through and talk a little bit about, what can we do instead? So my vision is some sort of presentation grading tool. And so I went to Gemini and gave it some of my thoughts, and they gave me a mock-up like this. This isn't too bad. I mean, this is kind of on the rough idea of what I had. So it's got something to track presentation times. It's got some spot for the kind of these common issues. It's got the ability to view the presentation and be able to kind of jump around in the slides, so I can go back and look at something if I need to. Same thing, ChatGPT gave me a very similar mock-up. I think this one was a little bit nicer in the sense that, I mean, it just looks nicer, but there's a lot of features like the fact on the left that it's kind of breaking it down, not just based on submissions, but there's other kind of aspects it's thinking about. So timing the users, right? So there may be multiple instructors in the system. It's got, kind of open-ended notes and things like that. So there's, a lot of these things. I think it could be useful. I'm not really going to constrain the team too much on what they do. I actually did vibe code this. So last spring, I actually vibe coded it over a weekend and created something, and I used it in the course for 3 or 4 of the presentations just to see kind of what would work. So I've got a lot of experience with that, and I know kind of what I liked and what I didn't like. And short answer is this does not work. So I'm going to probably strongly encourage the teams to come up with their own solution, create it from scratch. I do have all this code available, so if we want to play with it and kind of go through it and see what worked, what didn't work, if you want to get feedback like that, we have something to kind of go off of. In terms of the projects, there's not a whole lot of requirements I'm going to put on the team. So the only real strong requirement is you have to do it in Python. And that's just because everything I do now is in Python. Preferably, I would really strongly encourage you to use the Django web framework, but if you have a preference or a different Python web framework, you guys can make that argument. It's up to you. In terms of what the software does, the only thing that it really needs to do for sure by the end of the project is it has to be able to connect to Canvas to be able to download the submissions, which basically means you have to be able to know what courses and assignments and things are available to whoever's logged in. You have to be able to show the submissions. The submissions are PDF files, so you just have to embed the PDF in the web page and be able to go through it and show thumbnails and things like that. You have to support at least one assignment type, right? So one form for providing feedback. You need to be able to support more than one person providing feedback. This spring, we are going to have 2 instructors in the course, so we need to have the ability for both of us to go in and grade. All the data that we enter in should be persisted. If we go back later, it should just be there. And it should also track the use, the presentation time, basically like how long it was total, how long did they spend on each slide, things like that. So these are really the only hard requirements. Now, to me, the fun part is what are all the possible stretch goals? And there's a ton of things we possibly could do here. So we could do things like LM generation of the student feedback. So instead of that textual box that I showed earlier and me sitting down and typing that up, I mean, an LM could probably generate that, right? So as long as we take kind of all the notes and the data and have some notion of kind of what's a common feedback or common structure of feedback, we can probably get an LM generated textual feedback pretty easily. You could also look at doing some PDF or image analysis. Here you might be trying to detect common issues like if they're missing slide numbers, or if the text size is too small, or if there's contrast issues with colors or things like that. You could look into collaborative grading. So think like Google Docs, for example, right? Is it able to kind of show both of the instructors in their grading at the same time, and we're able to do it kind of together? Can we handle and reconcile differences somehow? Eventually, maybe it uploads the feedback directly to the Canvas grading rubrics. That would be quite nice. I'm not entirely sure about scores. That kind of scares me a little bit, but maybe it could suggest a score or something like that. Could you generalize this thing to support really any kind of assignment? That would be useful for other classes, for example. And that would kind of allow it to kind of expand where this thing is used. Could there be just a bunch of other helper tools? So I have ideas on things like, measuring, a tool to measure the size of the font, tools for grammar and spell checking automatically, be able to drag like a guideline in to see if things are aligned or not, keyboard shortcuts, the ability to display notifications to me when I have to basically show the card that says, hey, there's 8 minutes left in your presentation, things like that. So what's the impact of this particular project? Well, it's going to directly impact SoC 261. So typically SoC 261 has like 60 students a year. What we want to do is beta test your product in spring of 2027. So we want to actually ideally use it in the handoff meetings, which are typically in the end of February. That then will give you a chance to get feedback from us and make some revisions, and then reuse it in the release meetings, which are basically in late April. And that gives you a chance to kind of get some direct feedback. We'll know what worked or didn't work, and we can revise based on that. And obviously this can help those students directly, but really to me, the bigger thing is that a more generalized version of this thing really should work for any class and for any presentation. So what I'd like to do eventually is either open source the product or possibly spin it off into a startup, depending on what the team's interested in. And, I've looked and there are some kind of similar things out there. So there's this Timely Grader, there's Grading Pal, there's Grade with AI. There's a bunch of these kinds of tools out there. They don't really do the same stuff. Most of these for presentations, what they do is they take a video, they transcribe the video, and then they do some sort of LLM-based text analysis on the video and try to automatically generate feedback based on that. That's not what we're going for here. We really want the experts, the professors, to give the feedback and just use the AI, if we're going to use AI, to just kind of automate the manual and tedious process of turning that into textual feedback that the students get. So if this works, really, there's a potential to improve the feedback for thousands of students every year, which is a really cool thing. So I hope you're interested in this project, and I'm looking forward to see what you guys might come up with.